Hello. So today I have more of a serious video, kind of back to international relations and politics, but on a more kind of meta scale. So today I'm going to be talking about basically the role of ideology, and I think how ideology is kind of dying, in a sense, in kind of world politics today. So a bit of background. Everybody knows what an ideology is. The most kind of famous example is the Cold War, right, with kind of the capitalist Western Bloc and the communist Eastern Bloc. World War II is another example, right? So Nazism, fascism, um, uh, again with communism, liberal democracy, things like that. Basically, every side in a war has kind of this set of ideas that they want to uphold, and the clash between those ideas are considered kind of a test as to how good those ideas are, right? So people say, communism failed because it lost the Cold War, and Nazism, fascism failed because it lost the Second World War, things like that. It's not that black and white, but obviously you can see where people are coming from. And so there have been a lot of talk with the new kind of changing world about different ideologies, right? People talk about, Putinism, Xi Jinping thought, Trumpism, a lot of kind of isms being thrown around. And I want to kind of put in my own 2 cents on it, basically saying that those three figures, specifically Putinism, Xi Jinping thought, and Trumpism, are the same thing in that they are nothing. They are not an ideology. They are an anti-ideology, I believe, and it's just a very crude just form of self-interest and nationalism, which again is the opposite of ideology. The ideology is basically a thing that ties a lot of disparate people together under an abstract ideal, right? So hence the term ideology. But I believe all these figures are basically eschewing all of that and just trying to kind of gain the most power from themselves, power and influence for themselves. And this is often called realism, right? So if you've watched Professor Mearsheimer's lectures, he'll obviously eschew all forms of ideology like liberalism or democracy or things like that. Basically saying that all powers are basically just out for their own good. And to some degree, this is true, right? So if anybody's existence is threatened, then yes, they will become a very, very kind of pragmatic survivalist, and so they won't espouse any kind of ideology. But I think this moment, I think in history in 2026 is a very, very powerful one, just because of basically everything that has happened over the past 200 years, um, and how it seems like everything is kind of falling apart again. Um, so I guess we can start with Putin, right? So a lot of people have basically said, Putin or Putinism. What does he really want, right? What does he really want? He wants, the revival of the Russian Empire. He wants, the quote unquote the revival of the Soviet Union, although I don't think he actually wants that. But basically, he wants a great Russia again, uh, um, and he believes that he is entitled to kind of a sphere of influence in Eastern Europe because, in his mind, that's what a great Russia has. Um, which is up to his opinion. But again, he does not have any kind of unifying ideology. It's just nationalism. It's just more for me and less for you. Same thing with Xi Jinping thought and socialism with Chinese characteristics, right? I often say socialism with Chinese characteristics is not socialism in any way. Socialism with Chinese characteristics just, I believe, translates to just FU, right? It means that they're going to do whatever they want as long as they deem it to be for the benefit of China. And Trump, and kind of Trump in America right now, is the most kind of explicit um, in this, where basically he says, he had a tweet recently where he said, "He who saves his country breaks no law." Right. So he is not interested in upholding kind of liberal democracy or anything like that, and really anyway. And his really only interest is is to kind of further his own ends, number one, and America's kind of power abroad, just in general, right? And so Greenland is in the news, Venezuela is in the news, a lot of things like that. It's really just me, me, me. It's not any kind of principle or anything like that. And the reason why this is so important is because I don't think we've seen an era like this really since, I want to say, 1,000 years ago. Um, which, again, seems like a great exaggeration, but really, in the Western world, I mean, obviously there have been, wars of survival and things like that, but almost every party, almost every nation has operated under the assumption that they are fighting for a specific cause. So it used to be Christianity, right? It used to be Christianity, and like we are fighting for God. Um, and then it was liberal Enlightenment values, right? So even Napoleon, who was a very, very kind of pragmatic figure in a lot of ways, he espoused revolutionary values, and he said he was spreading revolutionary values to the rest of the world, right? And then for a while, the imperial powers of Europe said that they were again spreading Christianity and kind of civilization, right? So we have a civilizing mission to educate all these savages in our ways, and so that's why we are colonizing Africa and Asia and so forth. Um, and then in the 20th century, again, World War One obviously is a war where everybody says that it kind of lacked ideology. It was a very kind of like just a blood fight in general. But even in World War One, everybody said, the big kind of slogan was we were fighting for God, country, and fatherland, right? So yes, it was nationalism, but it was still tinged with a kind of we are protecting Christendom, we are the true heirs of Christendom, and in a way we're the true heirs of Rome still. Not explicitly, but again, Germany was ruled by a Kaiser, Russia was ruled by a Tsar, right? So a lot of things like that kind of signal kind of the angle at which they were coming, which was we are basically the true inheritors of kind of the true Christian tradition, and we are fighting for that. And then World War II, obviously, the most ideological war in pretty much all of history. As previously mentioned, Nazism, fascism, communism, liberal democracy, capitalism, a lot of all these different blocks, and everybody was solely focused on the ideology, essentially. And then the Cold War. The Cold War was kind of the archetypical ideological war, right? So not only are the United States and Soviet Union fighting for like supremacy, they are actually fighting for proof that their system is better, right? So like if communism produces better results here and capitalism produces better results here, that means that our system is better, and therefore more countries would be convinced to join our side. And they both had slogans that basically said that the other was going to fall because our system is better. Cool. And then even after the Cold War, there was this whole like war on terror and the kind of the religious aspect of it, right? So it was often framed as an issue between kind of religious extremism and rational Enlightenment values. Again, right? So it's kind of like a repeat of a few centuries before, and so that's when you got like the four horsemen of new atheism: Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins. Those figures kind of became popular around that time because they were espousing what they saw as kind of atheist rationality versus the specter of Islamic extremism, and that kind of held over the U.S. for a very long time. And so you remember Obama was called a Muslim a lot in those years because of this. But now it is 2026, and what does Trump stand for? He stands for nothing really. He stands for himself, and he stands for the perception that America is strong, right? So not the actual reality whether America is strong, the perception that America is strong, and so does Putin, and so does Xi. Xi is not really a communist in any practical sense. He isn't even really. He isn't even really a part of any kind of clique inside the Chinese Communist Party. He basically just stands for himself. Alright, so if you don't know, like the Chinese Communist Party operates in like these cliques, right? Whereas like there's like this team, there's this team, there's this team, and then like they kind of have like these internal rivalries. But Xi isn't really part of any of that. He is just kind of himself, and all really he stands for is number one, himself, and number two, the perception that China is strong. And same for Putin. Putin is not Putin is not part of any kind of real party to speak of. His party is basically just a one-man party designed for himself. He's not really a communist that's trying to revive the Soviet Union. He's not really even a czarist, obviously. He's really just out for himself, and he wants to have the impression on the world that Russia is a strong country. And so we're just back in the caveman era. And so if everybody is just supporting their own side, right? So whichever side that they happen to be born in. If you happen to be born in China, then you would probably just support Xi and Chinese expansionism. Same thing with America and Trump. Same thing with Russia and Putin. Everybody's just kind of blood and soul, just fighting for their own side. And it's all very anti-intellectual, and it's also all very depressing. Because obviously, if you have any kind of idealism left in you or left in your soul, then this is a very tumultuous time because you have no representative on the world stage, essentially. There's no major world power right now that still stands for any kinds of values or any kinds of ideals to stand up for, rather than just me. Um, so I still think there's hope. Obviously these things come in cycles. But yeah, I'm curious to hear what you guys think. And we'll see how this world kind of ends. Not how this little world ends, hopefully. Although it could end, since they all have nuclear weapons. But let's see how this all turns out. Cool. So thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.